People, it has been 11 books since I read Wizard and Glass. Since then, I've read It, The Mist, Salem's Lot, Insomnia, Rose Madder, The Regulators, Black House, so many others. And so I was so excited in The Wind Through the Keyhole to be reunited with Roland and Susanna and Jake and Oi and my boy Eddie Dean. And so imagine my disappointment when I find out that this book is a story about a time when Roland told a kid a story. I mean, it's the story is so long, the fairy tale is so long, and I just wanted to hang out with Eddie and Oi, you know? So as I understand it, The Wind Through the Keyhole was actually released after the Dark Tower series was completed. So I feel like for hardcore, old school Stephen King fans, going back and reading The Wind Through the Keyhole must have been such a unique experience after you know the ending of The Dark Tower, which I don't at this stage, as at the time that I'm recording this and the time that I read this book. I don't know the end of The Dark Tower. So I'm sure the experience was a different one because you know what happens and then you get to go back and get reunited with the ka-tet, and it might be very nostalgic to do that. But for me, I did not have that experience. This just felt like it just felt like an obstacle, you know? It felt like, come on, let's go, come on. This is going to be a spoiler review. It's going to be quite a quick review as well, I think, just because I didn't enjoy it very much and I want to try and keep things positive if I can. There are some elements of this book that I did enjoy. There's a lot that I didn't, so I'm going to talk about that. So we pick up after the events of Wizard and Glass, and we're with Roland and the ka-tet, and it's directly after the confrontation with Randall Flagg in the last scene in the Emerald City in Wizard and Glass. I remember when I read that, it was really confusing to me. Like, I didn't understand how the Emerald City from the Wizard of Oz could be in this book, and it's still not 100% clear to me. Oi, the little Billy Bumbler that's traveling along with them, starts to kind of act strangely, and Roland knows that this is because Billy Bumblers are able to. I always sound silly when I say Billy Bumbler. These creatures they have like a heightened awareness, and they're able to sense when a big storm is coming. This storm is called a Stark Blast, and so they know that they need to go and seek shelter because this is like a crazy storm, and they do. And then when they're seeking shelter, or when they're under shelter, then Roland says, look, there's nothing else we can do. How about I share a story from my past? And so he shares another story, much as he did in Wizard and Glass. You know, this is difficult for me to take, honestly, especially directly after Wizard and Glass, which is a book that I did enjoy. But Wizard and Glass was a story about Roland's past. And to have another book, a second book in a row, be about Roland's past, where no real progress is being made towards the Dark Tower. Oh man, it's given me what I'm going to call beam fatigue. I just want to get going, man. We gotta get to the tower. We gotta get to the tower. And again, I realized that this book was released afterwards, so I have to keep that in mind. But I'm reading these books chronologically, not as they were released, but as the events take place. And also, I bought the entire collection, and this one was slotted right into the middle. It wasn't put at the end. So this suggests to me that this is the order I'm supposed to be reading this in. So anyway, the story into Roland's past starts off where Roland is taking care of Colt, who is the guy that trained him as a gunslinger. He's also the man that he had to stand against in a test to become the gunslinger. And he's feeding him, he's cleaning him, and Court is just not able to take care of himself. And it's really horrible to see Court like this. For me, he's a character that I actually really enjoyed and had a lot of time for. Also, Stephen Deschain, Roland's father, is reassuring Roland and saying, listen, you're taking care of Court and taking everything on your shoulders, and you're doing this as a way of sort of paying like a penance for the murder of your mother. And this is something that we also find out about at the end of Wizard and Glass. And he tries to reassure him, look, you're not to blame for your mother's death. And so that was nice. Stephen Deschain was kind of like looking out for Roland and just saying, look, this isn't you. You got, I think the way that he phrases it is he says, you got turned into a gun and rear of the coos pulled the trigger. So that I like that scene. I like the early scenes. So then Roland's father decides that Roland has to get out of here. He needs to go off on another mission. And he and Jamie DeCurry, they get sent off to go and investigate something called a skin man or a shapeshifter that's been causing trouble in a nearby town. And again, this is another scene that I quite liked. I enjoy these little side quests, where we're able to see the effect and the presence of the gunslingers where they're at the height of their power. And it just kind of adds a little bit more depth to the concept of gunslingers, and also why Roland just is so proud to be one. For example, when Jamie DeCurry and Roland do arrive, they are met with such reverence. They're celebrated. They're like heroes riding into town. And it reminded me of a scene from The Drawing of the Three, when Roland is trying to encourage Eddie Dean, and he's saying, listen, don't give up. One day you could be a gunslinger. And Eddie turns around and goes, what? Why would I want to be a gunslinger? Like, why would I want to live your life? And Roland is just so shook by this. He's like, what? Like, you don't want to be a gunslinger? That's crazy. And having these backstories, like from The Wizard and Glass, and seeing how gunslingers were treated back in the old days, it's easy to see why Roland is just so stunned that Eddie can just be so dismissive of the idea of becoming a gunslinger. This is the best thing you could ever be. Anyway, Jamie DeCurry and Roland are both going around town, and they're gathering stories from witnesses and trying to find out who is this skin man, or what is this skin man. Some people think that it looks like a wolf that's been running around town. Other people think it looks more like a tiger. So there's kind of contrasting stories, and they're just trying to piece together exactly what's going on, acting kind of like detectives. In these scenes, Jamie DeCurry kind of takes the lead in the problem-solving aspect. Roland himself admits that he hates mysteries, which is kind of funny. I think Roland is a funny bloke, he's kind of basic in a way. He is brave. He's able to keep his composure under pressure. He's tough, and he has a good sense of what is right and what is wrong. But the bloke hates riddles. We've seen before that he hates riddles with Blaine the Mono. He's just like, no, just stop with all this, stop with all this. But yeah, I did like Jamie DeCurry. I think he's interesting because he's kind of the opposite of Cuthbert or Cuthbert, which I can't call him Cuthbert. I know that's his name. I know technically that is his name, but no. Jamie is the opposite to Cuthbert. He's not that charismatic. He's definitely more of the silent, analytical type, but he's really useful to have around. They find another victim of the attack, Bill Streeter. He's a little kid whose father has been taken out by the Skin Man. And so Roland actually comes up with a plan where he is going to use the kid as bait. And so he sends Jamie de Curry up to the salt mines where they suspect the Skin Man is hiding, and he's going to let slip that Bill Streeter has useful information, and let everyone know where he is so that they can lure out the Skin Man. So, Roland does come up with good plans. So anyway, Roland takes the boy into town, and he's sitting there in a cell with the young boy, and he asks him if he's ever heard the story The Wind Through the Keyhole. And this is basically where the book becomes a story within a story within a story. And I've got to say, I was not thrilled to hear that I was going to be learning about another fairy tale from Roland's world. Probably one of my least favorite Stephen King books that I've ever read is The Eyes of the Dragon, which was a fairy tale featuring Randall Flagg. And knowing that we're going to have another fairy tale, listen, I didn't even really like fairy tales when I was a little kid. So come on, let's get to the we got to get to the tower. We got to get to the tower, Roland. So whilst in this book, the fairy tale is probably takes up about this much of the book, probably about 50 to 75% of the book. I'm just really going to speed past the fairy tale because I hated it so much and just was not interested at all, but I'm just going to quickly go past it. So you've got Tim, he's a little boy, he's living with his mother Nell and Big Ross in the forest. They're poor, but they're happy. That is until Big Ross and his friend Big Kells both go off into the woods to, I think they're chopping down trees or something, and then Big Kells comes back and he says, Big Ross is gone, got taken out by a dragon. But now Nell is in a really hard situation because she doesn't have any income. The tax man is coming over every now and then. Big Kells offers a solution. He says, listen, get with me. I'll provide for you and for your son. You don't have to go in the poorhouse, and I'm going to quit drinking. And I've got a bit of a violent past, but I'm not that man anymore. And so Nell says, okay, yeah, you get a second chance. And so then on their wedding night, Big Kells gets drunk and gives her a slap. The tax collector comes along. I think he's also called the Covenant Man. And he slips Tim a key, and he says that this can open anything, but it can only do it once. And at this point, I'm just really hating the fairy tale. I'm really hating the fairy tale because it's boring, but worse than boring, it's pointless. To me, and again, I'm always open to being corrected. You can say, no, you don't understand. This isn't pointless. This is actually really integral to the plot because, and please don't give any spoilers or anything, about books that are coming up. Maybe Tim is like this massive character that comes back. Maybe Tim is the Crimson King, for all I know. I don't know. But at this point, I'm like, what has this got to do with anything? Anyway, Tim uses the key to unlock Big Kells' trunk, and he finds a silver coin that belonged to Big Ross, and so he knows that it wasn't a dragon that took out his father, it was actually Big Kells. Tim goes on this long journey to meet Merlin in the forest, and he's like a magician that can help his mother because his mother is, his mother's been really badly beaten, and she's sick, and it looks like she can't recover, but Merlin might be able to help her. And he goes on this journey through the endless forest, and he meets mudmen who I think they think he's like a gunslinger. And he goes to meet the tiger, and the tiger actually turns out to be Merlin. Inside the tiger's cage, there's a note that's been left there, and it's signed with the initials RF/MB. And here's something that I thought was pretty noteworthy, honestly. When Roland starts telling Tim this story, he says, "This is a story that I can recite by heart because I have been told this story growing up so many times." Has he never made the connection that Randall Flagg is in this fairy tale? And if he has, why isn't that noteworthy? And you might say, oh no, but back when he told Tim this story, he didn't know Randall Flagg. He knows him now. And don't forget, he's retelling this story to the ka-tet during the Stark Blast, right? So why isn't he going, hang on a minute, RF, Randall Flagg is in a fairy tale? What's going on? You know, it's just there's not even a moment where he kind of just recognizes it, or even just mentions like, I know this is a bit strange, but yeah, I just found it so bizarre that he didn't realize that the Randall Flagg, his arch nemesis, the person that basically tore his whole family apart, is in this story. Anyway, like I say, the tiger turns out to be Merlin, and he gives a napkin to Tim, and he says, this is going to be able to cure your mother. He takes it back, he cures his mother, and Big Ross gets all angry because he's been in his trunk. And the mother sticks an axe in his head, and that's the end. Correct me if I'm wrong. That whole fairy tale just seemed pointless. I mean, again, please do correct me if I'm wrong. Make me realize why this was so important. I'd appreciate it. All I'm saying is, if this book wasn't part of my journey to the Dark Tower, then I definitely would have DNF'd it about 50% through. Anyway, once we're back with Roland and Bill Streeter and Jamie DeCurry and the investigation, that's when I started to enjoy it again. I really like the scene when they had all the salt miners line up, and Bill Streeter's trying to identify which of them is the Skin Man. And then when the Skin Man starts to transform into this giant snake creature, and all of the other salt miners are like, you know, everyone's just panicking. It was really reminiscent, actually, of a movie that I really love. It's one of my favorite horror movies, The Thing, with Kurt Russell. If you've seen that movie, it really reminded me of that scene. That scene really reminded me of that film. Roland also gets this great line where he said something along the lines of, I never doubted I could make the shot. It's for this that I was made. And he just takes out the snake. Epic Roland moment. And then at the end of the book, we're back with the ka-tet. The Stark Blast is basically passed at this point, and Roland lets them know that he received a letter back then when he was in the town with Jamie DeCurry, and the letter was from his mother, who knew that he would be the end of her, but even though she knew that, she completely forgave him, and she hoped that one day he would be able to forgive her. And he kept that letter until it was just worn away to tatters and then taken away by the wind. And I thought that was a really nice bit of closure for Roland. I like that scene a lot. I like a few of the scenes quite a lot. But it's just such a shame that they're buried in amongst this bloody fairy tale. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just so anti-fairy tale, you know? I don't like them. Okay, so I'm going to do the ratings for this book. They're not going to be very good. And then after I've done the ratings, I'm going to talk about the next book that I'm going to be reading on my journey to the Dark Tower. It's going to be better than this. I know it is. I hope it is. Okay, let's do the ratings. And we're going to start with plot. I'm going to give the plot 2 stars out of 5. I don't feel like this story added much to the journey of the Dark Tower. And I'm just so eager to get going and follow the beam. Let's go. Let's go. The characters I'm going to give 2.5 stars out of 5. Really liked Roland. Really liked Jamie DeCurry. But other than that, setting, I'm going to give 3 stars. You know, the town of Serenity just didn't feel as interesting as other towns that we've come across in Midworld. Originality, I'm going to give this 2 stars out of 5. The fairy tale element didn't feel like any, it didn't feel any different to other fairy tales that I've heard. Even the Skin Man felt quite reminiscent of The Thing, which, I like, but it just didn't feel that original. And then overall, I am going to give this book 1.5 stars out of 5. It's not the worst Stephen King book that I've ever read. It's maybe the second worst or the third worst, but it is the worst Dark Tower book that I've read so far. Really didn't enjoy it. Anyway, that was book 19 of my 23 book journey to the Dark Tower. The next book on my journey, and we're really getting into the series proper now, it's Wolves of the Calla. Even though I didn't enjoy this book that much, I do have high expectations for Wolves of the Calla. I'm really hoping that it's not more bloody backstory and that we're actually following the path of the beam. If you'd like to continue our journey together, and if you'd like to see my review of Wolves of the Calla, then you can click up here. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and happy reading. This has got to be better, right?